Okay, so before we move on to the afternoon, we're going to be looking at the three houses tool next. Can I just ask everyone to focus in? I know the sound at the back's quite difficult for people, so if I can just ask everyone to keep the quiet conversations, just if you need to have them, just keep them really soft, because I know people at the back were finding it hard. So we're going to be moving on to look at the three houses tool in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to take us back to before the break when we were looking at having those conversations with families, bringing the signs of safety approach to families and using our questions as interventions, as relationship building tools, as well as tools in building safety. So in your handouts, and I'm sorry I don't recall what pages they are.
I heard 18. Yep.
Thank you very much.
18, 19, 20, and 21.
Okay, so what you've got are just some offerings in terms of questions you could be using with families. These are questions that I typically use that you can adapt. Yeah, adapt to your style, adapt to the language you're comfortable with, adapt to the families you're working with. So you've got 2 pages which are suggested mapping questions to use with families, and I've put them into the elements you're trying to elicit information around. So what kind of questions are useful in terms of trying to really have conversations and elicit information about existing safety, moments of existing safety. Eliciting information about parents' views around harm that may have happened to their kids. So they're just suggested questions. The next 2 pages are then suggested questions to use with professionals. So whether it's you're working with a colleague, you're working with yourself to think the process through, as you are organising the information within a map, within the Signs of Safety framework, suggested questions to help you elicit that information, help you think it through. Yeah. So I just want to say that before we move on. Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at the 3 houses. Oh yeah, I forgot the lunch slide. Can you just jump back? That's a real Australian boy. Just wanted to show you that. Okay.
That's not your son, though.
That's not. That's Phil's son.
Yeah, no, not so much.
Okay, so 3 houses tool. And I just, again, want to just really honour and acknowledge Nikki Weld and Maggie Greening in their work in developing this tool. And this tool is just being used all over the world. I heard a number of people speaking about it before lunch and over lunch as well. I think what's amazing about the 3 houses tool is it's incredibly simple in its design, and it's so powerful in terms of using it, both in terms of the way it really creates a space for young people to talk to us about what's happening in their life, about how they're feeling about things, what they're thinking about things. It's incredibly powerful in eliciting that information. It's also incredibly powerful when you then bring the child's view back to the family. And that's a process of itself in terms of thinking through when's the right time, to what extent is the child comfortable with that and involved in that process. But the actual process of bringing the child's view in the 3 houses back to the family can be the biggest catalyst to being able to then work with the family to build safety for the child. It can be the moment where parents go, okay, I'm in. I'm now talking with you. You know, and I'm willing to work with you and make changes in our lives. So let me just take you really quickly through the 3 houses. So here's just a quick graphic. 3 houses: house of worries, house of good things, thank you, house of dreams, wishes or dreams it's often called. And the 3 houses, as you can see, parallel the 3 columns in the signs of safety. So the what are we worried about, what's working well, what do we want? There's very much that parallel process. And there's times, for example, when I'll use the 3 columns with kids or young people, times when we'll use the 3 houses with adults or with a whole family network. They're very much interchangeable tools. And when Nikki Weld was developing this, it grew for her out of a grid, a 4-column grid that she then developed into houses, coming out of the Maori model of health, which looks at the real resilience of the house as being part of our being, and a house representing and being symbolic of who we are as human beings. So she was using that same metaphor that comes from the Māori ways of thinking about health. And in a conversation she had with Andrew Turnell, they were then both acknowledging that there needed to be a future focus, which is where the House of Wishes and Dreams came from. And what it is at its both simplest and most complex is an assessment and planning tool to use with children and young people. That's what it is. Speak to me. Okay, so this was the bit we were going to have the video from Nikki Weld that I left behind. I guess the one part that I wanted to really speak from Nikki is she gave a bit of an overview when I interviewed her and spoke about how she developed the 3 houses and what that meant to her and what she was drawing on. She talked about the importance for her of narrative therapy and strengths-based practice and the Maori model of health and the solution-focused work. She spoke of all of those of informing her thinking. And she then gave a case example, but at the end there's this beautiful moment where she, let me say first, Nikki's no longer working directly in child protection. She's now working as a social work manager in a very busy hospital practice in Wellington, New Zealand. So she's supervising social workers, some of whom, of course, deal with child protection issues with families. But child protection is no longer her primary focus. But there's this lovely moment when I'm interviewing her where she says, you know, what it meant to her to develop this tool, and then she says, please use it if it's useful. And she blesses our work with families and children. It's just a beautiful moment. So I guess I want to offer that. I can't convey that with a sense that she offers it, but I wanted to, at least to bring that into the room to some extent. As she wishes us, and Nikki's all of probably, I don't know, 35. You know, she's only a young woman, and she has an amazing commitment and passion to working with families. So I want to show you a couple of case examples. This is an example from a young girl who I've called Emma, who's 8 years old, who had been brought, quick genogram. Emma's the oldest of 3 children, sister Kate and younger brother Jacob. Emma's mum and dad, I think I'm going to get this in a moment. Emma's mum and dad separated 2 years ago. All 3 kids are living with mum and her boyfriend David, and spend every second weekend, I'm going to come over this side, and they spend every second weekend with Dad and his girlfriend Kathy. Now Dad's taken Emma to the hospital with bruising to Emma's back, and Emma told Dad that Mum kicked her. It was my job to come and talk with Emma and her family and hear more from her about what's happened. It was one of those situations where I was sitting down, there was Dad's mum, so grandma, and the 3 kids, and Kathy, the girlfriend, all in the room. The middle sister Kate was crying. Jacob was just having a wild time with the toys in the room, was really loud and vocal. Grandma was sobbing. And I'm having a conversation with the family in the midst of that, as you do. And Emma was just going to talk to me. First of all, she wasn't particularly engaged. At the moment where she obviously heard me say, I want to talk to everyone in the family, she looked at me and she literally moved her chair forward and she went like this. I want you to start with me. And she's 8 years old. Yep, I want you to start with me. I said, okay, that'd be great. And I said, so there's a tool I use a lot when I'm talking with kids called the 3 houses. I'd really like to use that with you, Emma, if that's okay with you, and Dad, if that's okay with you. And Emma's like, yep, okay. And I said, can I explain to you what that is? And I really quickly on a piece of paper drew the 3 houses, at which point Emma moved her chair even closer to me. She's like, good. And she was totally ignoring everything else that was happening in the room. It was amazing. All this noise was going on. And I then asked Emma, look, I said, sometimes I do this with kids just with me on their own, and we do the 3 houses together. Sometimes kids prefer to have Dad or Grandma in the room with them when we do the 3 houses. What would you like? She said, nope, just me and you. I was like, clearly everyone else wants you to leave the room. She was amazing. So it didn't surprise me by how much she had to say. And so there's a quick 3 houses. With the 3 houses, the kids draw pictures or write words inside each of the houses, or you can write for them. So I always offering kids that choice. Emma said she wanted to write, but she wrote about 2 words and she was kind of talking faster than she could write. And I said, do you want me to write that? She said, yeah. She quickly gave it to me. But boy, she watched every single word I wrote down. Has anyone had that experience? Where kids, she watched every single word. And as I wrote each sentence, I would then read it back to her because she wanted to know, had I got it? Had I got it? And if ever I hadn't quite, she would correct me. So let me just show you quickly what she said. So in her house of worries, she was saying, you know, I asked her, what are you worried about right now? She said, that Mum yells at me. I don't like getting beaten by Mum. I don't like seeing my brother and sister getting hurt by my mum. Mum slapped Kate really hard on the leg. Mum kicked Jacob on the bottom. I don't like my mum hitting Jacob and Kate in front of my friends. Then my friends don't want to come to play with me at my house. I'm worried that when Granddad is gone, I keep getting hit by my mum. And my mum drinks wild turkey with David. You know wild turkey? Yeah, okay. Now, at this point and this occasion, I didn't ask follow-up questions to get more detail about any of these incidents. She was on a run and my decision was just to let her keep going and to come back later and get all of the detail that we need. That was my decision on this occasion.
And you started with the worries?
I asked her which one she wanted to start with. So drew up the 3 houses on 3 separate bits of paper, put them on the table in front of her and then said, which one you want to start with? Said, some kids like to start with this one, some kids like to start with that one. What one do you want to start with? She said, the worries. So I just pushed the other 2 to the back and put the worries in front of her. House of good things, she said, bizarre. I feel safe if the court decides that I can live with my dad because he doesn't have any drugs and I won't get hurt at his place. Straight like that, she said it. She's 8. There'd been lots of family court. We have in Australia, we have separate family court and children's court. If you have the same? Yep, yeah. Okay. I can see my granddad and my uncle and his girlfriend when I go to my nana's place. Here she's going to tell us about networks. And you hear granddad in the worries as well. You heard granddad there? I like that I get fit when I'm with my dad and don't get fed junk food. Oh. Yeah, that was it. And then I was asking her, okay, is there anything else that's going well? Anything else that's good right now that you want to tell me about? Nope, she said. So then I tried a couple of other questions about, okay, what about at Mum's house? What are the things at Mum's house that are good? She said, nope, nothing else. What about at Dad's house? What about at school? And she was like, no, Sonja, I said nothing else. Okay. So I said, well, I'm just going to put it up there, and if there's anything else you want to add later, we can come back to it and do that with each of the houses, is what I generally do. So the House of Dreams, she said, I wish I could live with both Mum and Dad together. Yeah, don't you always hear that, hey? I wish I wasn't yelled at by Mum. I wish that I lived in a better house, that my mum's house was a better house. I wish I could swim anywhere. No idea what that relates to, but I'm just writing it down exactly as she says it to me. I wish that Granddad would always stay with me. You hear there's Granddad again, very clearly an important safety person for her. I wish that Mum would wake up in a better mood. Tells us a lot, huh? I wish I could live with my dad. I wish that I could see my mum every second weekend so that I wouldn't get yelled at so much. So really powerful information that's coming out of this little 8-year-old. Now, that we probably spent 10 or 15 minutes first talking with the whole family together before it became clear that Emma was ready to talk. It was probably only 25 minutes doing those 3 houses together because she was just talking and I was just writing. It was that quick. Yeah. Okay. Let me show you a second example before we just invite you any comments, reflections, questions that you have. This is a little boy. This wasn't a boy I worked with. This was a work of Joe Goodwin, who's a very experienced family reunification worker back in Perth. So this is a little boy. Kayden's the youngest with his 2 siblings. I'm sorry the other ages have dropped out there. And Kayden and his brothers were removed from Mum's care when Kayden was 12 months old, so 4 years ago. Now, we're only just introducing permanency planning in Western Australia, so we have kids who are very regularly in care for 3, 5, 9, 10 years. Absolutely in foster care. Very long drift. We're seeing that the signs of safety is actually really starting to arrest that drift, but very long periods of time. It's really tragic. So Kayden was removed, all the 3 boys were removed when Kayden was 12 months old. Mum was using drugs and some ongoing neglect stuff around the boys, around, particularly around medical stuff and them being very underweight. I wasn't around at that time. So all 3 boys are in foster care. Mum's made some really significant changes in the last 12 months, and a decision was made to refer the family to a reunification agency to outsource the reunification. And so the statutory agency are working with Mum and with a reunification agency, who are the workers who did this work with the boys. The statutory agency have a perception at the moment, their view is that Kayden and Jamie's 7, are too attached to the foster carers to be returned home. So Dylan's going to be returned home at the moment, and that's actually in the process of happening. Jamie and Kayden are not. And Jamie and Kayden were telling the workers that they were really pissed off about that. I work as a consultant to this agency, working with them, and we talked then about this worker, Jo, using the 3 houses with all of the boys to try and really understand their views. Because as they're driving back in the car with her, Kayden was saying things like, why don't I get to go home like Dylan is? Why is he getting to go home and not me? Is it my fault? And he knew, of course, that he'd been removed, they'd all been removed when he was 12 months old. And Kayden thought it was his fault. He'd done something wrong when he was little. So here are Kayden's views in his 3 houses. Worries. He drew this picture, and then the worker asked him, so what's happening in the picture? And he said, I'm worried every time I have to leave my real mum, Lisa, the one that made me go to foster care. That was his way of identifying his real mum. Kids often in Australia call mum and foster parents mum and dad. Don't know if that happens here. Yeah, lots of controversy about that, as you can imagine. House of Good Things. He said, I'm happy when I play the PlayStation at my real mum's house. House of Dreams. Oops, sorry. I'm happy because I'm waving the magic wand. I wish that I could live with my real mum, Lisa. So those were his views expressed on that day. Not saying that's all of his views, but they were his views expressed on that day to that worker. And his 3 houses and both the other boys were able to be brought to the family, to the foster carer, everyone sitting together and thinking through what's in the best interests of these kids. What then happened was all 3 boys were returned. A very clear, careful reunification process. All 3 boys were returned home. And I heard about 3 months ago, they've been home for 12 months. Apparently it's going incredibly well. Things are going well. So I think on that occasion, that 3 houses enabled that boy to have a voice that wasn't being necessarily heard well. Okay.
Yeah.
Exercise. Oh, sorry.
Can I say something
Comments,
quick?
yeah.
Yeah, just we're gonna put you into an exercise to do some thinking about this. When we asked you how many people had heard of 3 houses, almost everybody in the room raised your hand. This is a deceptively simple practice that is not really so simple. And the line for it that I've been saying lately is, this is still an interview, and you still have to use all of your skills, all of your creativity, all of your imagination at engaging the child in the process. In Massachusetts, a worker came to me recently and said, I did the 3 houses and it didn't really work. I got nothing in the worries. And I said, okay, well, maybe there aren't any, but tell me what happened. And she said, well, I just took the worries and I put it down on the table and I said, so draw me your worries. And I said, okay, well, maybe we should slow down a little bit and talk about this. This is a subtle practice. The drawings are a way of mediating a conversation. It's still a conversation, right? And so that's what we kind of want to kind of go into a little bit today. Yeah.
And Phil and I, as we were planning this session, we were trying to think, how can we be most useful, given that a lot of people in the room have had experience with the three houses in using it? How can we be most helpful in this forum in helping you to deepen your practice? You know, maybe to surface some of the difficulties, the challenges that people have faced, some of the brilliant moments where you just feel like this tool has made a real difference and has really, you know, kind of connected with your practice and your ways that you love to work. So we're going to take you through an exercise in a moment to try and really bring out the learning, the knowledge, the wisdom in the room and share some of that as well. But yeah, first of all, I want to ask comments, thoughts, questions you have. You've just seen two examples. You'll have had experience yourself perhaps in using this tool. Comments, questions at this point. Tom?
A question about terminology. I notice you refer to foster carers, which has a very different sound from foster parents. Do you have any comment about that?
We use both interchangeably. We're probably not thinking it through as deeply as you guys, I suspect. Yeah, we use both interchangeably. So in certainly a lot of families I work with, if we refer to foster carers as foster parents, birth parents find that really offensive and would really not want the foster carers being referred to as foster parents. So we tend to use carers more, foster carers more. Yeah. So I'm just, hang on, yeah, let's go there.
What does that do for the idea of permanency? The idea of having someone take a child and keep them till they're 18 if their parents can't take them back. Do you have that concurrent?
Are you asking about in Australian? Yeah. Is that I'm just wondering, is that something that's useful for you guys to hear about? I'm just wondering if that's a conversation we might have individually, or is that something, or should we? Because that's quite a big conversation. Probably not so useful for me to go into that in detail now. Yep. But let's catch up with each other to have that. Thanks.
The three houses, are you recommending to use it for children 0 through 18?
The youngest, the question, if you didn't hear it, was we're recommending the three houses 0 through 18. The youngest child that I've used the three houses with is about 3, between 3 and 4. And in terms of people around the world, the youngest I've heard is 3. I know someone used the safety house recently. I heard someone use the safety house tool, which we'll look at tomorrow with a 2-year-old. But yeah, the youngest I've heard. The oldest I've probably used the three houses with would be a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. Often with teenagers, I'll use the 3 columns or the 3 houses. I let them choose, usually. Yeah.
Right, that was my question too, is the age group. But also, if you have a younger child, can you change the names on the houses?
Nice question, lovely question. The question was, can you change the names on the houses with a younger child or a different cultural context? One of the lovely things about the three houses is you can make it work because it is a simple kind of tool of itself. You can change the name of the houses, you can change the shape of the houses. So I've got an interview with a great woman from Northern England where she says, 3 houses, I love that tool. She says, I don't use houses very much. I use, soccer balls, footy balls, rocket ships, dogs. She kind of goes like this. And so literally, you use whatever works. What's important are exploring those 3 questions, those 3 areas. So I know up in British Columbia, in the Tanaha Kinbasket people, they're using teepees. People change it to whatever works culturally. I've used dinosaurs with little kids. In Australia, in Western Australia, Vanya De Paz, one of our child protection workers, developed the wizard and fairy. Have you seen those tools? Which some people use and love, and some people say culturally, like Indigenous people in Australia just say to me, culturally it's not appropriate to have a wizard and fairy. Don't be using that with my child. But you can change it to what works, and often we'll invite the child to name the houses, give them a special name. So some kids have given them, like my house of sad things, or my fairy house, or my princess house, or my yucky house. Oh, yeah.
I've done the three houses a couple times, and it was like, there's one that was really good, the one with the
teenager, I just got nothing. But I like the fact that when you said you let the child just go ahead and talk, because I always stop the child and go, oh, what does that mean? Yeah. So I'm going to stop and not ask them anymore. I'm just going to let them ramble and then ask them. I think stuff.
I mean, that's what I found works best for me. But, you know, you need to find your own style, hey? And with teenagers too, I haven't ever done this, but I've done it once, but I've seen other people do it, is start the process with a teenager and ask them if they want to actually just fill it in themselves. So you're going to see a family tomorrow that I've worked with, and the House of Good Things, I asked the teenage girl, did she want to fill that in? She took it away and she just wrote pages and pages of all of the good things happening in her life in her mum's care. So I've seen people do that with teenagers, just take that away. We've got an example that Phil and I were watching last night, and we were thinking in terms of time we wouldn't show. If anyone decides you want to see this video, let me know. You can watch it during the break because it's here. This was a woman in Tasmania who told me about using the 3 houses with a 16-year-old young woman who was choosing not to speak. She describes her as being selectively mute. And Phil made the lovely point last night of here we are talking about giving a child a voice, and very, very literally, this example was about giving this young woman a voice when she was choosing not to verbally communicate. And the supervisor had noticed that this young woman who'd been removed from mum and dad's care, was in a residential facility, was leaving, she wouldn't speak to anyone, but she was leaving notes around the place, suicide notes, describing how she was going to harm herself and kill herself. And the supervisor, in reading the notes, saw that the young woman's written communication was actually very good. People were saying that she had a disability and was on the disability register, so people weren't quite sure intellectually whether she had a disability or not. So this supervisor went out and sat down with the worker who hadn't used the 3 houses before and with the teenager. She sat on the floor and she put in front of her 3 houses where the supervisor and the worker had written down all of their understanding of the worries, the good things, and what they wanted to happen for this young woman. And they did that both for her in the residential facility and in mum's house. And they said to her, look, we understand at the moment you don't want to talk with us. We totally get that and respect that. We want to explain to you what we understand, why we're making the decisions we are, and why it's so hard for us at the moment to make the decision about what needs to happen for you to go back and live with mum. So we're just trying to work all of that through. And they left her blank ones for her to fill out. And she did. She filled out the House of Good Things about good things at mum's house. She said the next day the young woman came into the Child Protection Office, stood like this and smiled at her, pulled out a little tiny bit of folded paper, which she had folded the House of Good Things up into a little tiny square, flicked it across the room at the worker, and then smiled again. And when she opened it up, it was that young woman's views about what she thought was going well for her when she was in mum's care, to try and add to the picture. And this worker was seeing it as just the beginning of trying to build communication and build relationship. It was just the very small next step in trying to open that up.
What do you say to children in this process about how to be shared with others?
Really lovely question. And it's a question I'm going to put back to the group if that's okay with you guys. So the question, in case you didn't hear it, was what do I say to kids about the process of the 3 houses being shared with others? Okay, so can I ask it as quite a structured question? So the question about what you say to a child about who else might see their 3 houses, who else you might show the 3 houses to and the information that's in it, who else the child might show it to. There's the question about what you say and when you say that. Just take a moment, think about the times you have worked with children and young people using the 3 houses, or times that you might. Would you say that beforehand to a child, that, you know, other people might need to see your 3 houses? We'll be showing this to other people afterwards. Would you say that afterwards? Would you not say it at all? Take a moment for you as a practitioner. Who thinks that they would show it beforehand? Just show of hands. Sorry, who thinks they would say it to the child beforehand? Okay. Who thinks they would say it afterwards? Who thinks they wouldn't say it at all?
I think it kind of depends. You would have to base it on age of the child, significance of what's being said, because I would typically, like, pictures kids draw, based on how intense it is or whatever, and I'd ask permission to include it in the court reporters and things of that nature, or share with the parents.
So very much it's going to depend on the situation, the young person, what's going on for them, their age. What I want to highlight, though, is that I think this is one of those professional dilemmas we have to think through for ourselves. I don't think there's a right answer to this. I know where I sit now as a professional, having thought this through. I know where I sit. I would say to you, though, it's a really important question to address for yourself. Discuss it perhaps in supervision. Think it through. Because what you're doing here is you are creating a situation of trust and relationship with this young person, and you want to be able to be as clear and honest with them as possible in the complexities of what we have to deal with and what this young person has to deal with. These are not black and white circumstances. You might have a young person who says, I don't want you telling anyone any of this stuff I've told you, and you know that to build safety for this child, you have to be sharing this information. So how are you going to do that? In a way that takes that child with you as much as possible. So I've kind of learnt some quick things about what helps me as a practitioner do that, and I imagine in the room there's a whole lot of knowledge and wealth of experience about that. That's one of the things I think this next exercise will bring out. Let me just offer a couple of quick comments there. One is that the three houses tool is at its most powerful both in the child having someone hear their views, that's part of it, but it's also about bringing those views to others so that together the parents, the safety network can build safety around those worries. That means that on many occasions we want to take the three houses to others, and you want to do that in a way that involves the child as much as possible. So you want to have that conversation with the child. If there's not immediate safety concerns for that child, you can much more go at the child's pace and ask questions such as, okay, if there was someone in the family you were happy to share it with, who might that be? Okay. Who'd be the first person you'd be happy to share it with? Or maybe which bit of the house you're saying grandma maybe, which bit of the house would you be happy to share with grandma? So you can break it down a bit. It doesn't have to be the whole of the three houses. But I think that's one of the most important questions you have to think through and grapple with in using this tool.
Can I?
Any other?
Yeah, this is a bit of a rhetorical question. I'll name it right off the bat. But just let's just name it. What's the difference if I'm working with Kayden or what was the earlier child?
Emma.
Emma. If I'm working with Emma, thanks, and I go back to Emma's parents and I tell them this is what Emma said, versus if I go back with Emma's words, or in some cases Emma's drawings. What are some of the potential differences? Believability. I'm sorry? A potential greater danger of being hurt. That's what you would worry about. Yeah. So you'd want to be thoughtful about that. Yep. And so, where is Emma? Although I will say, if you're worried about sharing this with a parent is going to create more danger, I think that should be a whole kickoff into a different kind of dialogue about safety planning. Like if the child's own words are going to make the situation more dangerous, if you're so worried about that, if you're a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 on that, I think that's a reminder quickly to, well, what are we going to do? Because if the child's in contact with them, the child may say it anyways, right? So if you're thinking about that, how do we make safety for that child? What about for other folks, the difference of actually getting to hear the child's own words?
Well, I just had parents, it means so much more to see their child, their baby's handwriting, their baby's pictures on a piece of paper. That speaks for itself. And, it removes, I'm facilitating getting that message across, but it means a lot more coming from their child.
Absolutely, right? It's just there's so much more emotional resonance if it's my child's words and drawings that I'm seeing than mediated even through a very kind, well-meaning social worker. I think the potential is there. Yeah.
And I've seen so many examples of dads and mums being moved to tears, dads and mums saying, I had no idea they were hearing us fighting. You know, I didn't know they even knew I was using drugs. You know, I didn't think they've ever seen the drugs. How do they know? You know, and just seeing parents really impacted by that. One beautiful example a worker told us was of a remote Aboriginal community where the mum had come into the nearby town and brought her 5-year-old daughter in with her, and the community she lived in was a dry community where there was no alcohol. She came into town, everyone was drinking, mum started drinking, got into lots of fights. She was pulled out of the hotel by her hair, and the daughter saw all of this. When the workers came to talk with mum, she described to mum the 3 houses and said, I'd like to talk with your child and hear how this has all been for her. Mum gave permission for that. Worker went and talked to the daughter, did the 3 houses, brought them back to mum, and mum started to cry and immediately said, I'm going to sort this. She said to the worker, give me half an hour. Half an hour later she came back and she'd bought bus tickets already home. She took her daughter back to the community, left her with grandma, came back to town. Mum sorted what she needed to sort there in terms of, you know, stuff in her life she wanted to deal with, and then she went back home. You know, it was that quick. Yeah. Okay, we're wanting to do an exercise now. Ali, this is the moment, if you didn't mind in moving the camera. So this exercise is really going to invite
Okay, just loud, as they say in my son's class, loud and proud.
In Yuba County, one time we did the 3 houses with a young girl about 10 years old, and she adamantly did not want that shared with her parents, and her house of worries was something that should have been shared with the social worker and the parents.
Yep.
How do you address that? I mean, it would have been instrumental in the fact of looking at the FR to the FM.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do with that without betraying her trust.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask, have other people encountered those dilemmas? And if so, do folks have thoughts about it? How you've tried to manage that? A child who says, I really don't want you to share this. Yeah. Okay, I'm good. Like, I don't really want the mic either.
Right, I'm turning mine off too.
Go ahead.
I did have a similar situation where the children said mom could see but not dad. They were a little bit fearful of dad. And I was able to honor that and also give dad the information verbally that I knew to be true in this particular situation.
Okay, so that's a lovely example of trying to kind of live into a promise to the child, but also still do the work that needs to get done. Yeah? Yeah?
Would it be possible if a child didn't want a parent to see it, or was very adamant that they didn't want parents to get that information, to ask them, let's do this version of it, and now would you mind doing a version that you wouldn't be opposed to your parents seeing?
Okay, so that's an interesting idea. So kind of making a version that, certainly it would be an interesting question to start with on the way to your idea. What part of this are you most worried about this parent seeing? You know, to me, one of the huge gifts of this tool is that it is an assessment as well as an intervention, right? And so the child's response to that, to the idea of it being shared, to me, still tells me something I should know. And so to me, one part of it is that there's a dialogue to take place. Can you help me understand, what are you worried about? What might happen? Exactly. Has there been a time when your father or mother has responded in a way that's scary? Should we get that in the house of worries? You know, so like to me, that's still to me that's a signal of opening some dialogue as well. It's not to me just do we share or do we not share? It's like, all right, there's more of a conversation to have. Ultimately, we're still left with your question though, so I haven't forgotten. Yeah.
That was kind of along the line of my thinking of having them go through the process and then say, would you mind doing another one that you wouldn't be opposed? And then instead of asking them, because sometimes it's very hard for teenagers to answer a question like that, is then seeing what they left out, what they're willing for their parents to see, and then starting a dialogue that way, kind of backdoor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice idea.
Yep. Yeah. Did you have Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, and sometimes if you really want to honor, I mean, if you obviously want to honor the child, is go back to the parents and explain, I did this procedure with your child, and they don't want you to see it. What might be on your daughter's house of worries that she's worried about? And that way it takes some of the onus off the parents too, because they're really thinking from their child's perspective. I'm not owning my drinking, but she may be worried about my drinking.
That's a lovely way of doing it, yeah.
Having a child in the home, Kurt, the concern of having a child in the home, they give you information. Some of it you just flat may not be able to ignore, you know. And the other part of saying to parents, she has said something that she doesn't want to share with you. I would have a concern that in some homes that parent would browbeat that child. What'd you tell them? You know, I told you not to say anything. What'd you say? So, boy, you know, the question that you ask is really such a delicate line of, am I walking away creating more danger to that child by trying to, you know, get things out in the open than, you know, I mean, it's a tough one.
And one thing I think is really important here is that we just take a step back for a moment from what the child has actually written, their 3 houses, to remember what's our purpose here. You know, our purpose is to hear the child's view, hear what the child's worried about, get some more information from the child, and our purpose is about building safety for the child in the future. And what that's going to mean at times, as you get more assessment information, there will be times when what you are seeing or hearing from the child says to you, I have to take immediate action to ensure this child's safety right now. And if the child giving you that information you think is going to place them at a greater risk, you need to act. And that means that you may be acting counter to what the child wants you to do. My best sense there is the best we can do is just have that conversation with the child. Own that. Say, I'm so worried, I can't agree for you to go home to be with Dad and Mum and Dad tonight. I'm so worried. And then to have the conversation with the child about where's the best place for them to be right now. Sometimes that's the reality. That yes, it's a fantastic tool. And yes, we get an enormous amount of information, and often that means we have to then take action that isn't easy for anyone.
And that child's giving you that information for a reason. Whether they're consciously aware of it, they're giving you that information for a purpose.
And I think one of the dilemmas of having the child's voice more in the centre of the work that we do is that it holds us much more accountable to the children and to having that conversation with the children, including the hard stuff about what we have to now do. And I think this tool helps us remember we have to have those conversations with the child. We can't leave them out of it and have what we very often have in Australia, which is kids who are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 saying, I've got no idea why I've been in care for the last 6 months. You want to tell me? Because no one else has. You know, it reminds us we have to have those conversations with the child, including at times when the child doesn't like a single thing that we're saying. You know, this tool is not about making the process nice and easy. It doesn't. There's those lovely moments where you see the parent turn things around, the incredible moment where for the first time they're willing to talk to us about what's really going on in the family. And sometimes the child can be feeling like, I wish I had never spoken to you.
You know, thoughtful, another interesting conversation to have with a child who says, you know, I don't want you to show this, might be, depending on the age, you could go into a scaling question. On a scale from 0 to 10, 10 is you'd feel totally comfortable with your parents seeing this. You would feel totally safe. 0 is you'd feel completely in danger. What number are you at right now? What would need to happen for you need to move up by 1 to move up by 2, you know? And if the child's too young to have the scaling question, you could land it in the house of dreams. It's a little bit robbing from the safety house. Imagine in your house of dreams, you would feel totally safe about your parents seeing this. what would be different? What would need to be different? Who else would need to be there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another way just to kind of, and that begins to move us into some safety planning conversations with the child. Lastly, at least for me, and we have a little agreement that we can agree to disagree. Sometimes I'm going to say, you know what, I am duty-bound to talk about some of this. Can we talk about how I should do that?
Exactly.
So that I have a bottom line that I'm going to need to bring this back to certain people, but I'm really willing to talk about, what's the best way to do that. And so maybe in that case a child says, I just don't want you to show them the drawings. Okay. Maybe that's my compromise. I'm still going to bring it back in that case. If the, and just to be clear, I'm going to be very thoughtful about how am I going to make sure the kid's going to be safe. If they're that worried about it, I'm going to take that very seriously. Yeah. Other, on this, or we can begin to branch out other dilemmas with this, or best practice. Yeah.
I think, just like talking to both parents, not separating one parent, setting up the right family system dynamic.
Yeah.
And so it may be that we're shy about sharing ourselves, or the child, I'm not saying if they're not safe, definitely no, but exploring that, what if we do it together, or what if we, but trying to set up and model good family dynamics and interactions and how people can share and can support, because in a lot of families that doesn't happen all the time. So not taking the expert role or taking ourselves as triangulation in terms of that. So.
Yeah.
For me, I was interested in hearing from people that have used it, how that's worked in multiple child households, either in the family's household, foster care. Do they find it better to use in school? Because the whole interest with using it, and then I'm thinking like, two of the families that I like to use it with, there's like 3 kids and 4 kids, and they're from 4 to 8, and how do I get on the floor with one?
Did you hear some useful thoughts from others about how to manage all of that?
And is the school a better place? So just feedback on people that have done that and how that's worked.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've heard a lot from other workers, and I've experienced too, is that kids can be very situational with how they respond in the 3 houses. So if you're doing the 3 houses with a child in a foster carer's place, they're much likely to give information that's more relating to there. If you're doing it at mum's house as compared to dad's house. So to just ensure that you're using questions that help the child think into other locations as well. Sometimes kids younger kids will like to have one of their older siblings there with them as they do it. The first time I think I tried the 3 houses, there were 3 kids, it was a nightmare. And partly that was my first time. So now often I'll do the 3 houses with 2 workers. I'll get another worker to come with me and we'll do the 3 houses together with a sibling group, or we'll just do one at a time. Just all of that is the preparation you're doing beforehand. Thinking, where is this young person likely to be most comfortable? Where feels like the best place? Someone spoke this morning about being prepared, knowing about what's happening for the child beforehand. So learning what you can about that young person and what's likely to work best for them. So where, who else with, what kind of materials are going to help? Even as simple as, do you want to be on the floor or on the table or under the desk or outside under the tree? Where is going to be the place that's most conducive to that young person talking with you?
When I've done this, I've brought examples to the child. I've tried to be very careful that they're not provocative and that they're not detailed in the area of the harm that we're worried about talking. So I'm trying to be very careful about not putting words in their mouth. But I want them to, it's that orientation piece. I want them to understand what I'm asking them to participate in. And so when they do that, it goes so much better. The children I've worked with really can follow this, and they have a sense of, I get how this works. And so that's been a big help to me. Yeah.
What you might consider examples.
Just like what you saw today, but I'd be really careful, not to bring if it was sexual abuse, a sexual abuse 3 houses. You understand?
Are you framing it for them?
Yep. I want them to, can I show you this? I do this with lots of kids. Can I show you what this is like? It's one way I can understand what you've been going through. Can we walk through it? And, so we're kind of getting that agreement. Yeah. Was there a hand over here? Or?
Yes, there was a hand.
Was it a while ago? All right.
Somebody
Yeah.
asked about bringing it to the family or to the parent. And if the child really doesn't want to and there's no safety issue, I think it'd be a great tool to get some of the information and then reframe it and reword it for the parents when the child's not there, so that you can get that dialogue going and eventually work it into our whole family can be together. It's kind of like coming to the back door with the secret knowledge that you have.
Yeah.
And that seems to work.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah. Absolutely.
Just a quick question. But have
Yep.
you had any, I like to share them, sometimes we're allowed to have them in the family team meetings if the child permits.
Yes.
But have you had any negative, responses to that at all?
In a family team meeting?
Yeah.
We like to have it with family
Have
teams
you?
if it works out.
Have you?
Yes. I mean, have I had negative?
Yeah.
Just one parent stating that that wasn't true, and it was a child expressed actually the worries. I don't like it when mom passes out after using drugs.
Yeah.
I don't like it when she sleeps all night and all day.
Yeah.
I don't like it when I don't get fed. And she just straight up said, I don't do those things. And that's hard, it gets a little bit more complicated at that point. Never had a child as of yet say not to use them. In fact, I think it's preferred if they're not there, they just feel okay. But it was a significant amount of worries, and the parent was just in denial.
Can we surface this for just one? We'll just take one last minute.
Just let people hear what that was.
Yeah. So you show it to the parents, and the parents say, "You're full of shit. That's not true. You're putting words in my kid's mouth." What do you do next? What if people tried to do next? What do you do at that moment? Back the kids up. So how would you do that?
Oh, I was making a joke. Pack.
Oh, pack the kids up.
Yeah.
I liked both, pack and back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just reiterate, I think for me, what the child, that's what your child has written.
Yeah.
These are from your child's, words. This is what your child is thinking, or your child's perception of what's happening in the home.
Yeah.
Help us understand why your child would be thinking this.
Yeah. Right. So you could ask a question. Do you have any idea? Help us understand. How could your child be thinking this? Is that an interesting question? Can I ask you about that? What do you think has led to this? Right. So that's again, and that can be part of your assessment with the parent. Yep. Yeah. What else? Yes?
You can validate for the parents. I can understand that may be really difficult to hear that your child has that worry.
Yeah.
However, this is your child's worry.
Yes. Yep. So you can get why this is really hard. And sometimes, by the way, I'll warn parents, whether it's in mapping when we're talking harm and danger, or if I'm showing them a 3 houses or a safety house, ahead of time. This is the hard stuff, and you heard Sonja doing that in the interview. This is going to be hard, and so we're acknowledging that up front. But these are your child's feelings. This is their perceptions. Yeah.
And also asking the parents, what do they think is going to be in their child's house of worries before you offer the child's worries? Yeah. Just exploring that with the parents, exploring it with the grandparents. If you've got a family team meeting there, it's perfect. You can ask different people about their views. Yeah. Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about actually is using the 3 houses with babies, for example, or children who can't speak. I've often used it with the whole family groups or with the parents. If your baby could speak, what would be in your baby's house of worries, including pregnant mums, Yeah. If your baby had been born and could speak, what do you think they'd be putting in their house of good things about their experience of growing and developing inside you? What would be in their house of worries? Asking grandma and others to do that. So we've got it up on the whiteboard, and the group together are filling it in for the child, the baby. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, last comment, and then we're going to move on.
The child refused to interact with you around 3 houses, and if so, have you somehow gotten back to it or chosen another path to communicate with that child?
Thank you. You just prompted me to one more comment I wanted to make here. So, Greg, would you mind coming just being here beside me for a moment? In both those questions about what do you do if the parent's saying, that's bullshit, none of that happens, or a child saying, I don't want to do this, I guess I just want to make a quick visual. Like in any conversation we're having with young people, with parents, we can get into this kind of conversation, where the parent's saying, that's bullshit, didn't happen. And we can try and convince them that actually these are the child's words and actually it did. Or be much more in this position where you're asking questions together and you're looking for, well, what do you think about? And I guess I just invite you in every conversation, try and think, okay, how do I shift from this position to this position? Yeah? And if you catch yourself where you can feel it, because you're going to know when this is happening, huh? You know when this is happening. Catch yourself in that moment. I've got much better at doing it now. I go, oops, okay. And quickly think, what can I say? And sometimes it can just be a pause is enough to just go, and sometimes I'll even say, oh, I'm really sorry. You know, we're about to just get caught up in a big argument here. It's not going to be useful for anyone. Can I ask you something, a different question instead? Just literally reposition. So, thank you. So with a young person, I've had young, not little kids have refused, but certainly teenagers who've just said, not doing that. And again, what I've tried to do there, what I found works in that situation is to actually just have the conversation with a young person again about, this is about your life. You know, this is about us trying to work to build a kind of future for you that's going to help you grow up well and healthy to have the life you want. I really need to hear from you about what you think. You know, I've heard from these other people. We're going to be, did you know that there's a whole lot of people sitting down together and planning about how to keep you safe? We need you as part of that. You know, so tell me about what's the best way then of me being able to work with you and hear from you. What's the way that's going to work best for you? Just kind of bringing it back to the purpose. Yeah. Inviting the young person to think through, asking them, has there been a time where you've worked, like there's been, you know, you've had all these professionals in and out of your life. Tell me about a time when you've actually had a professional who's actually been helpful for you, was actually, a person who actually made a difference. What did they do? What did that person do? And then you can do some of that.
It is just after 2:40. I know we came back late. It feels like a funky time for a break, but the day ends at 4. And so what I want to know if I can get an agreement on this. Can we really do the 10-minute break? Like really, we will start in 10 minutes. Can we make an effort at that? Because we have one last section. We really want to start doing some practicing around danger statements and safety goals. We think we can do it in about an hour and 15. We'll be cramming it a little bit. But if you could go and really be back in your seats in 10 minutes, that would be great. So we'll see you in 10. Reminder or news, if you don't know it, one of the things I really appreciate about Sonja and the work she's done is that she's created a series of kind of mini books. They're small, kind of 15 to 20 page books about a number of these different practices. And the Training Academy has purchased copies of almost all of these that they can distribute. And so there is a specific one about 3 houses that has a DVD. Some of you that took the training with me have seen the DVD. But just if you are interested, it's a great way to begin. We've got a prompt sheet in your handout book that looks like that. And that's certainly a great way to get started. But if you're looking for a place with more detail, I would just turn you to these. And they've been a great contribution to my work and to my work as a trainer. So thank you for doing this.
You're so welcome. Yeah. And the one I'm writing up one at the moment, which is about that whole process of bringing the Signs of Safety framework to families, what we did this morning. It's in process. Yeah. So I'll get that to Susan once it's done.
Yeah. So this is one of those moments I mentioned this morning that's a bit of a dilemma. Here's the dilemma. For those of you that are new to the practice, we want to go into a Signs of Safety practice that's really about how do we help families, networks, and ourselves as professionals be really clear about our focus in the work, both in terms of what we're worried about and in terms of what needs to happen for us all to feel like there's future safety. There's a lot to say about these, and so I'm going to say something very short, just as a placeholder, and I hope that those of you that are here all week, you'll find this back-ended later, but also that if you're not here the rest of the week, you'll seek out some more information. In Signs of Safety, we make a distinction between being really clear about what is the past harm and what is it that we're worried about going forward. And that we ask people to really get their skills honed at being able to articulate what has the caregivers done that have had impact on the child. That's a harm statement. As a result, what are we worried about happening in the future? That's a danger statement. Harm is about the past. Danger is what we're worried about in the future. These danger statements, I think, are one of the practices which has most moved me and into thinking about how can I better have those hard conversations with families and really lay it on the line and be very clear. And someone spoke about this earlier today. And take responsibility. This is what CPS is worried about. You know, and be really, really clear about that. This is what we're worried about. And I'm going to own it, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to do it in a way that doesn't, I'm getting tired, doesn't, do it too squeaky clean, like nicey nice. You can tell my vocabulary is shooting to the floor, but doesn't try to do it too soft, but also is in a way that everybody understands. Remember, I'm going to keep hitting this point. People can't participate in making more safety if they don't know what the danger is, if they don't know what I'm worried about, if they don't know what they're worried about. And just as an aside, here's a footnote. We oftentimes work with networks and extended families, and parents say, I can take my baby to my mom's if my boyfriend comes who's violent, or if I think I'm going to pick up and use. And certainly I'm excited that they've got somebody else that they can do that with. But if that other person doesn't know the danger statement, if that other person doesn't know what we're worried about, they cannot act to be safe. Does that make sense? And so we got to move past, like in Massachusetts, I'll read a case record, and it's like, created a network, family, mother says that grandma can take care of baby. And I asked them, did you meet grandma? Did you share the danger statement with them? Sometimes they have, and sometimes they haven't. And so that's just in 90 seconds, an intro to danger statements. And the connection here, think about this almost like brackets, that I can't begin to figure out what future safety for this family would be like if I don't know what I'm worried about, right? And so I'm matching the safety goal to the danger statement. Every family has a different danger statement. It's behavioral. It's really clear. I don't need the family to agree with it. This is, again, a long thing we could talk about. I want the family to agree with it. It works way better if they do. But sometimes I'm just going to say, here's how we're responding, here's what we're acting about, and then we move into safety.
Can I say a couple of quick things? Let me check something with people in the room. Who's had a go at writing a danger statement? Okay. Who's found it easy to write a danger statement? And I see this again and again, and it was my experience too. I think I was using the signs of safety for about 3 years before I noticed that there were danger statements. I went back and I think at that point we weren't as good at teaching it either. We didn't have it kind of as clearly mapped out. But I went back to all of my previous cases I'd mapped. There were no danger statements. And I kind of went, oh my God, how did I miss that? Yeah. All over the world, when I see people learning about the signs of safety approach and integrating this approach into their own practice, I see people struggling with danger statements and safety goals. That's what we're going to focus on in this next bit. But here we go. We've got it written really clearly. What are we worried might happen to the children in the care of these parents or caregivers if nothing changes? But it still kind of is a complex sentence. Break it right down. When I work with workers, they're trying to write a danger statement and they're struggling. If I just ask, what are you worried might happen to these kids? Workers just go, blah. That's the question. That's it. That's the question you want to ask yourself. What am I worried might happen to these kids in the care of these caregivers? Yeah, if nothing was to change in their life. That's it. That's the question you ask yourself. Cut through all of the formula that we're putting up, which is us trying to ask this question as simply as we can, and ask yourself that question. Yeah.
So The formula is a beginning place to start. It's a nice way to help me to shape these statements. By the way, if you're new to these, on page 8 here, and then again on page 13, 12, where are we? 12. You'll see pieces of this that you can go back and get some details. I know everyone's turning to it now. You're right. As soon as you say that, people turn to it. Short, pithy statements that I could share with my supervisor, that I could bring to a family team meeting, that I could share with a lawyer, where we could try to move to some agreement. Who's worried about what action and what potential future impact on the child? These are the danger statements that Sonja made based on Chloe after her work with them. Do you want to say something about these real quick?
So this was on, you read those 2 pages this morning when we started off for that case example for Chloe. These were the danger statements. They're not perfect. I didn't try and fix them up. It's just what I had. Yeah. So CPS and hospital staff, we would have had the name of is DCP was at the time, but I'm just generalising it. CPS and hospital staff are worried that Tina and Jason will yell at each other and hit and punch each other while Chloe is present. I could have made that more simple while they're holding Chloe or Chloe's with them. And that Chloe could be accidentally hurt if she gets caught up in the fighting or be very frightened by Tina and Jason's fighting. That's one, yeah? Worried they're going to fight, she's going to get caught up in that. Second one, I'm worried, and the hospital staff and CPS are worried that Jason might hurt or frighten Chloe while he's drunk by doing things like holding her upside down or yelling at her. That's what we've heard has happened in the past. That's what's being reported to us. That's what I'm worried. Something like that might happen in the future. Third one, CPS and hospital staff are worried that Tina and Jason will use amphetamines and then won't be able to look after Chloe properly, like feeding her, cuddling her, bringing her to medical appointments, because remember she's got the respiratory issue, yep, and keeping her safe. I mean, I could have added a whole nother list of things here. I'm trying to have doing things like that. So those are the things that I articulated I was worried might happen to Chloe in Tina and Jason's care.
And again, we could spend a lot of time with these. It's a very rich practice, but imagine just for a second creating these, being able to bring these to the family, to have a dialogue with the family, like on a scale from 0 to 10. 10 is you're worried about this too. 0 is you're not worried about this at all. Like, that's really good for me to know, my supervisor and I can be really clear so that especially those of you in supervision or management roles, when you're having to look at a lot of cases, sometimes like in Massachusetts, a really good manager who's looking at a lot of cases will have like a one-page face sheet, and she'll have like a genogram, and she'll have the harm and danger statements on it, so that like always is a way of prompting, this is why we're involved with the family, right? So these can serve a lot of purposes. But what we want to focus on is a little bit of how do these begin to inform goals that are based on parent action, goals that are not service-driven, but are safety-driven, right? And many of you have heard the bumper sticker phrase, but it's a good one, right? Safety and services are not the same thing, right? Services are a means to an end. Safety in this practice is an action. It's a verb. Actions of protection taken by the caregiver, demonstrated over time. How can we get clear from the beginning about what's the end zone? What are the actions we're looking to see differently? Have you ever had this situation where you make a case plan? It's very filled with services. The family does everything in the case plan, and you don't feel any better at all that the child is safe?
Yeah.
Okay. What we're talking about is trying to trade. Some of that might be on the family. Some of that's on us to really think about our practice and how do we describe the behaviors of safety. Yeah.
And you're going to hear a mum saying that tomorrow. You're going to see a video of a mum that I've been working with where she says, well, I didn't know what I needed to do. I didn't know what they were worried about. And I hear that from families over and over again. You keep moving the goalposts. You keep lifting the bar, because we haven't got really good at just nailing what would we need to see these parents doing in their care of the kids to be satisfied the kids were safe. just want to come back for one moment to danger. So
You
can we
want
just
danger?
jump back to danger just for one sec? One forward to the
Oh, you want to go to the
Chloe's.
statements?
Yeah, to Chloe's. Thanks. When I kept working with the family, Tina and Jason told me they were also worried about these two things. They weren't worried about the third. They didn't think this was going to be an issue for them. They were pretty clear that they could control their drug, manage their drug use, and it wouldn't impact Chloe. I didn't agree with them, but that was their view. But the first two they were worried about. So what we just then did is CPS, hospital staff, Tina and Jason are worried that. So having all of those conversations with them, which was quite a while, this wasn't the first conversation they said to me, yeah, Sonja, we agree with you. Yeah, we're worried about that too. You know, it took time to really work that through. But then we just add their names into there. If grandma's also worried, grandma's in there too. So it becomes a working document that you're changing over time. Okay, we're going to come then to the safety goals. Now, often in workshops, Phil and I will be teaching the whole kind of crafting of danger statements, getting clear for yourself and writing them. That's going to happen for people who are going Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're jumping straight to safety goals. So just imagine that you've totally got danger statements clear for yourself. You've got it now. You can just write a danger statement any old time. What we're going to do is move into really getting safety goals clear. Can I come back to the signs of safety form for just a moment?
Yeah, you want to go to the framework?
I think I'll actually just get them in there.
Okay.
Fantastic. Can I ask you for a moment to go to page 6 of your handout? So looking at the signs of safety form, again recognising 4 quad, 3 column, same framework, laid out differently. Have a look at the what needs to happen column. Yep. You'll notice there's 3 headings in there, 3 different elements. Top one is the agency, and for some reason I've dropped out the word safety there, which I should not have done. Agency safety goals is the top one, family safety goals is the second. Okay. This is the one place on the form where we write the family's views separate to everyone else's views, to child protection's views. Everywhere else, harm statements, danger statements, complicating factors, existing safety strengths, it all gets written in together. We just name up who it is, whose view it is. Here, the goals are written separately, and it's very deliberate. It's about knowing and acknowledging that for change to happen, what do we have to have? For change to take place, what is needed? Buy-in. I've started a bit more in the last couple of weeks thinking about the work that I do, and I think the work, I'm just going to speak to you speak for you for a moment, if you're willing for me to do that. I think the work that we do is about being a change agent. It's about facilitating change. Whether you are a manager, a coach, a trainer, a frontline practitioner, it's about facilitating change. And what all of the research into change tells us at every level, from religious practice right through to frontline child protection work, change happens when people have a vision for where they want to be. And then we step toward that. So if we want families to make changes in their lives, we've got to get really good at listening to what families think they need to be doing. But this is not an open-ended family. Hey, what do you want? What do you want in your life? Okay, I'll help you get it. We are about being focused on the child's safety. So you're asking that question about what the family wants very purposefully. It's about what do you want in terms of future safety for your child? What do you think you need to be doing to show everyone that your kids are going to be safe, particularly in relation to those dangers? So can I ask you to grab a pen on your framework on page 6, grab a pen and connect up from the danger statements, the future danger, over to the goals. Connecting up from the danger statements in that first column and just connect up with a line over to the goals. As Phil was saying, that's the connection. Your goals directly address your danger statements. The goals are not the broader vision. I mean, I believe if I was to work with a dad, for example, who had a long history, as Chloe's dad did, of being violent, including hitting his partner with a crowbar, a big metal bar, I believe if I was able to genuinely get alongside that dad and asked him what changes he wanted to make in his life, if he told me stuff that had nothing to do with Chloe or with Tina even in his violence to her, I believe that those changes would make a difference to Chloe and Tina. That's what I believe. But in child protection, my job is get focused on safety for Chloe. So I'm not going to take the time to ask the bigger picture about what does Dad want in his life. I'm asking, what do you want in terms of the changes in the way you look after Chloe? Changes in your life about how your behaviour impacts on Chloe. That's what we're going after. And what I have learned over and over and over again, if I can have meaningful conversations with families about that and really help them to get thinking about it and listen well to what they're saying and use questions to really get details, the case is just a breeze. Everything else falls into place. There's no more, there's not even a suggestion of denial. The question of denial kind of drops out of the equation even. You know, there's not resistance. It's just like family members are saying, this is where I think I need to be. Now, okay, let me get there. It might take some time, but that's what I see makes a difference. So that's why you saw me start off with family goals. I've learned, let's just get to that as quickly as possible. But one of the important steps, I think, before we can start to have really meaningful conversations with families about what do they think safety for Chloe needs to look like, is we've got to start for ourselves to get clear about, well, as a professional, as a social worker, what would I need to see these parents doing? So you can then reference what the family is saying against your goals, your benchmarks. That's why on the Signs of Safety framework, we've got both the agency goals and the family's goals. When you're safety planning, those two goals are brought together, and that gives you the next step into detailed safety planning. What we're going to focus on now is helping you get even sharper at writing those safety goals. So is that all making sense? I know it's last thing in the afternoon and we're kind of moving through this pretty quickly. We're kind of going through the time, but we're trying to do it in a very relaxed way. Have you noticed? So is this kind of making sense to people? Yep, there's some head moving behaviour, even late in the afternoon. Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's have a look at safety goals then. Thank you. So for goals to be meaningful, they have to directly address the danger statements, as we've said. You've heard Phil and I both say it. They've got to directly match. And one of the ways we do that is literally look at the danger statements. Okay, have I covered that one? Yep, I have. Have I covered that one? Yep, I have. Literally match it across. I started using this formula because it really helped me think about the safety goals. I offer this to you. If it's helpful, use it. If it's not, you change it. And then if you were willing, send me what you've adapted it to, because I'll be able to use that as well. Okay? So here's the formula I'm using. In this case, let's talk about Tina and Jason. Tina and Jason will work with CPS and their safety network to develop a safety plan that's going to show everyone that. Blah, blah, blah. We'll come to the blah, blah, blah in a minute. That first bit is about process. It's about clearly communicating to the parents and to the safety network. Guys, this is about, we're going to have to work together. And Chloe's going to need to have a safety network of people around her. And that, to develop up a clear safety plan, a detailed safety plan that's going to show everyone that, and here's the detail that matches the danger statements. So let me give you an example. If we jump to the example, and then I'll come back to that.
Which one do you want to do?
Yeah, this one. Yeah,
okay.
Jump back. Yeah. Okay, here's an example. It's a family we've worked with. Paul, who is the dad, This was a dad who, boys who were 8 and 10, Dad was getting drunk. He was doing stuff like literally grabbing a big sword that he had on the wall and running around after the kids and saying, you know, I'm going to cut your fucking head off. Threatening to kill the kids with the sword. That was what was going on. So here's our statement. Our safety goal to Dad is saying to him, Paul, you're going to need to work. Oh, someone's changed that. Paul's going to need to work with child protection and a safety network to develop and put in place a safety plan that's going to show everyone that Jack and Sam will always be looked after by an adult who's clean and sober, and Jack and Sam will always be disciplined in ways that don't hurt them physically and leave them feeling safe and cared for.
What about emotionally? That kind of would be a little scary.
Yeah.
Feeling safe.
Sorry, I'm a little thrown here because that's a bit different from what I had. I think I've used 2 examples and I've kind of put the wrong one in. Sorry, I'm a bit thrown. Yeah, so in terms of the emotional stuff, what we're trying to say is leave them feeling safe. That was one thing about them feeling safe, and also cared for, because he was saying things to them in the harm, which was about, I don't want you anymore. You're not, you're not my boys. When he was drunk, that's what he was saying to them. You know, I don't want to care for you anymore. I'm going to just give you up to someone. So the middle part, as you can see, is saying what are the behaviours we would need to see? What are the actions we would need to see the parents taking in their care of the kids to show us that that danger is not going to happen? So those are the bits that directly address the danger statements. And often you've got one little point for each danger statement. The bottom part is saying we'll need to see this plan in place and working for a period of however long. For me here it was 6 months to feel confident that the plan's going to keep working once child protection withdrawal. Okay. Having a look at that as an example, it's just one example. Again, it's not perfect, it's just me offering up my work there. What do you notice about that? What strikes you first?
Can I see this for a second?
Sorry, say again?
It was positive.
It's phrased in the positive. Say some more.
Well, I don't see any mention. We didn't know what was going on. There's nothing mentioned about don't harpoon the kids with the sword.
Yeah, yeah. So it's saying what we want to see Dad doing. It's the presence of something. It's not the absence of it. It's not saying we don't want you to do this. It's saying instead, if Dad wasn't doing that, what would he be doing instead? So it's saying to Dad, this is what we'd need to see you doing. Yeah.
How would we address, that's physical abuse and alcohol abuse. How would we address DV? Because that's really common now.
Yeah. What we've got in the handouts as well, because we couldn't cover, we just didn't have time, unfortunately, to do lots of examples. So what we've done is we've put in there, on a couple of pages, a whole lot of examples of danger statements and safety goals for the different types of abuse categories. So we've got ones in there, for example, for...
Yeah. Sonja? Yeah, Chloe's is in there, so I don't think it's something...
Yeah, don't read Chloe. Oh, is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, give me just one moment. I'm just going to read this one out to you, if that's okay. Phil's just pointed out to me, Chloe's safety goal that we're going to get you writing in a moment is on this page. Don't go looking at it, if that's okay. Okay, it's on page. So if I can ask you, for everyone who's looking at this page, please don't. Okay.
You can look at it in 45 minutes.
You sure can.
Yeah, it's 16 and 17.
Yeah, so the family violence one is Chloe's. I'm not going to read that out to you. So if you can just hold that question for a moment. But yeah, we've put those examples in there because sometimes it can just help to refer them. So just one or two more people, what do you notice about this? As kind of the way the safety goals framed up.
Can I just say something? Just
sure.
as a placeholder?
Yeah.
Begin to think to yourself, what would I be worried? What's the worry about impact on the child in a situation of family violence or partner violence or domestic violence? What are you worried is the impact of the child? what would be the behaviors you would need to see that would feel like they would protect the child from those dangers? So parents would need to either refrain from violence while the child is there, or to ask for help, or to make sure the child has a safe place. And we'll get some details. But this is not a cookie cutter. This is actually it's both a little bit of an art to it, of really thinking through how do we start to name the safety behavior, the action of protection that we want to see different respond to the danger. And that's part of the practice of this, the art of this.
Yeah, nicely said, nicely said.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I was going a bit too quickly. Just to add a little bit more to what Phil's saying, the sort of things that I might typically write in a safety goal around family violence would be, I would want to see, for example, if Paul had a partner here, Tanya, that Paul and Tanya had ways of sorting out kind of any arguments or conflict between them in ways that were safe for the kids to be around, and that didn't involve yelling, screaming and hitting each other. Perhaps you might want to be specific like that. But they had ways of sorting out their arguments that were safe for the kids to be around. That's the kind of stuff we would typically say. So you're putting it in, you're wanting it to be very specific in terms of what is the behaviour you would need to see as acts of protection for the kids relative to the danger statements. Yeah, it's got to directly relate to the danger statements, to what you're worried might happen to the kids. Yeah.
Ideally, don't you want to do this with the parents?
Absolutely.
I mean, we do the dangers when we, like at our FGCs, when we've listed all the worries and dangers, and we get down to the danger statement, we ask the parent to help to develop the danger statement with us.
Just in terms of practice, here's what I've found for myself, but this may not be the case for everyone. What I've found for myself is, what we were talking about just a little earlier was that for parents to make change, those goals need to be theirs. That's what we know. For parents to make change, the goals, the safety goals, need to be theirs. Or at least at a minimum, for them to understand that child protection has this goal, and the parents may not agree that that's even a change. They might say to us, I'm already doing that. I'm already doing all of those things. What are we going to say back to them? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, now we need to see you doing it. What I've learned in terms of my practice is, if I go to parents and we have a collaborative process of trying to shape up these safety goals, I find it much harder to be assessing, is that enough safety, unless I've done some thinking myself first. So if I've done some thinking for myself first, as a child protection worker, as a social worker, what would I need to see these parents doing in the care of the kids? Then I'm not going to give that to the parents. That is not the practice. The practice is get clear for myself, get clear for ourselves, put that aside, and then go and have the conversation with the family. Whether that's one-on-one with a parent, whether that's in an FGC context, you are then asking questions to elicit the parent's view. And what I've learned is, if you've done the thinking beforehand, your questions are going to be much sharper. You're much more likely to bring it to the impact on the child and very specific detail.
It's almost like if you've taken the time to articulate in-house, these are some of our bottom lines. These are some of the behavioral changes we would need to see. I think we're in a position to have a conversation where at the end of it, I can leave feeling assured we've talked about what needs to be talked about. It doesn't mean I'm going to superimpose my goal over there, completely. It's like that's a starting point for me to be clear. This is the bottom line I have about this. How are we going to have a conversation about it? Yeah.
And that's part of that, the art of the practice, which is, as much as possible, wanting this to be driven by the parents. And at every step of the way, being clear about your own position. And having taken all the time you need to reflect and get clear so that you are continuing to guide the practice with really purposeful questions. So if you come back to the signs of safety framework, the agency goal and the family safety goal are listed as two separate components. And that's to remind us, get clear yourself about what are your bottom lines in terms of safety and elicit the family's goals. And you'll hear us tomorrow talking about how we then bring that forward into safety planning. Okay, let's just jumping back for a moment, jump back to the formula. So can you see, first bit's just a process statement. Family, parents, you're going to have to work with us. This is about us working together. It's about a safety network, and together, us coming up with a clear safety plan that's going to address the dangers. Yep. And in terms of the safety behaviours, you're going to have very clear descriptions of what behaviour you're going to need to see from the parents in their care of the kids. Those dot points, they relate directly to the danger statements. Yeah? And then the bottom one is in terms of your time frame. How long are you going to need to see the parents doing that for? If they were to do it for you for a week, is that enough? Who's heard parents say, how long are you guys in my life for? Yeah. Yeah. Who thinks it's important that we actually can articulate that to parents and say, this is how long we need to see you doing this for? Yeah. We've got to do that thinking, and that's not an easy decision to make. And I think supervision is one of those places you want to be having those conversations. How long would you need to be seeing parents demonstrate safety for you to be confident? One of the other things the signs of safety approach does is it actually asks you to name that up.
Sonja, when I have taught this, a lot of people feel uncomfortable with this.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and we may have some people here. How can I put a number
yeah.
on, you know, this, you know, statement about how long I would really need to see this? You know, if there's anyone out there that's feeling that way, like, what would you want to say to them about that?
Very nice question. So, I think when we break it down and actually say, okay, if the parents were doing what we needed to see them doing, how long would we need to see them doing it for to be confident that once we head it off and close the case, they're going to keep doing it? That's the question. Yeah, that's the question. Exactly. How long do you think you'd need to? If this was a friend of yours, if this was your sister, if this was your auntie, grandma, how long do you want to see mum and dad doing this for so you're feeling confident that actually this is going to keep working and your grandkids are going to be safe? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm way in the back. How do you...
Lovely to hear from you way in the back.
How do you reconcile that with court deadlines?
Yeah. Ask them.
So, and I have to apologise that I don't understand your context well enough to be able to answer that as well as possible. So I'm going to put that back. I mean, I've absolutely got some thoughts I'd be happy to offer, but let me put that back to the room. So for people in the room, how are you reconciling this way of working, which is about detailed, family-led safety plans with your court deadlines? Yeah.
We have certain deadlines, so you usually have a 6-month review, or you can always call for an earlier review if you want to do that. I think what's important, well, for me, what this is so wonderful about is that you're thinking ahead, because oftentimes we don't want to deal with this, and so the 6-month hearing goes by, and the 12-month hearing goes by, and oh my God, we're at the 18 months, and they haven't had an overnight visit, and oh my gosh, and then the judge sends them home on a Thursday afternoon, and they haven't, you know, and then the foster parent's really upset because the child just, somebody comes and picks up the child, and our whole system is just, you know, so if we do this ahead of time and think it through and have this kind of, you know, it's very clear, everybody can be.
Absolutely. Now remembering back to that diorama we had out the front with everyone positioned, yeah? Over there is closing the case. At what point in this life of working with a family do you want to have these safety goals clear? As early as possible. As early as possible. In practice, again, I'm not sure how much you've had a chance to really start doing this in practice. When I hear about where people in this room are after 12 months of starting to use a signs of safety approach, says to me there's some really incredible practice going on here, because people don't normally go this fast. That's what I've learned. But I'm not sure how far you've gone. So can I ask, are there people in the room who feel like you've been able to do this? Get your danger statements clear with families, get your safety goals really clear, and work with the family to really elicit their safety goals? Can I just check, is there someone in the room that feels like they've had it? Okay. Tell me, in terms of your experience of working with the family, how much time did that take you?
Well, I work in ER, and we've done several of these actually in ER pre-court, and a lot of them haven't even gone to court, or even VFM. We've had some that were done in 30 days, or maybe we opened up for a 60-day ER case, and then we do these standard practice with all of our cases at jurisdiction.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you're talking about very early on, within those tight deadlines that you're, yeah.
I mean, the closest I've had was an immediate, and in terms of work days, there were 3 work days in between when I went out and met the children and the day we had the FTM.
Yeah. So that is possible. That's what we know. You want to say something?
I mean, the prerequisite is obviously you have to be able to articulate the danger. And sometimes we can do that on day, 0.
Yes.
Like sometimes we're very clear. Sometimes it takes a little while to dive in and to really separate the harm from the complicating and to be very clear this is the danger. So, but it's hard to make these kinds of goals if you haven't articulated the
Absolutely.
danger.
And sometimes it can be that you've articulated the dangers clearly. Parents are not yet willing to hear that from you or talk to you about their worries. You've been able to articulate the safety goals clearly, the agency safety goals, but it's going to take some more time in terms of building a working relationship with the family before family is going to talk to you about what they think needs to happen and change.
Yeah. There was a hand up back here. I saw. Yeah.
When you spoke to doing it in ER, that was kind of my question. So that last piece up there, then, let's say you opened a 60-day ER case, would that then be at least 60 days, and then you step out at that time?
What we'll typically do is we'll do anywhere from 30 to 60 days with the idea that we'll reevaluate, because we also do a lot of in-house staffings that don't always involve the parents, and we're very upfront with the parents that I do not alone as an ER worker make the decision, and so we'll reevaluate at 30 days, we'll reevaluate at 60, I mean depending, and then sometimes a lot of these, because it's such a good rapport building, our parents will ask for VFM cases that can go 3 months or so.
Can you just give me, what's VFM?
Voluntary family maintenance.
Yeah, cool. And the other thing that we'll often do in that situation is ensure that we are involving other organisations, NGO organisations, support organisations in that process with the family. So when child protection withdraws, there are other organisations and agencies that have been part of that process of assessment and planning and detailed safety planning with the family, so we know that that's ongoing. Yeah. Sorry, a couple of questions here, then we'll come down to there. Yeah, Liz.
Well, I just came back from a conference in Washington that Nancy and Sid Gardner put together on substance abuse and child welfare in the courts, and this was part of the question that kept coming up, because all the different timelines, the ASFA timelines, child welfare timelines, and the alcohol and drug treatment timelines. And so that had been one of my questions here, is that particularly when you're dealing with issues around substance abuse, one of the things I notice is that there are no services in any of these safety goals, and that's fine, but how do you take into account the length of time that it takes to deal with certain kinds of issues?
Absolutely.
And the number of counties around the country have been
grappling
with
all around
this
the world. It's all around the world. So you'll notice that there are not services in the safety goals examples I've shown you. Sometimes families will come up with services in there. Where the services do get located in the Signs of Safety framework is in the next steps. That we're seeing services as things that can help families move from where they are to where they want to be. Yeah? Asking the parents, okay, Dad, you're saying that you want to, when you get pissed off with Liz, for example, when you're pissed off with Liz, rather than giving her a backhander, what you want to do is calm yourself down. How are you going to do that? Has there been a time in the past where you've been really pissed off with her, but rather than giving her a backhander, you did something else? Yeah, you did. Okay, what did you do? You know, well, I went in the bloody lounge room and I turned the television on really loud and I sat there. Or I turned on Dean Martin, you know, because I really love Dean Martin music. I just turned it on and I listened. You know, or I went for a walk around the block and actually I just kept walking. And I walked for 2 hours until I walked it off. There's an exception question which has invited Dad and given him the opportunity to think about and tell us about ways that he has solved that in the past. Not every time. If it was every time, we wouldn't be there. But some ideas about how. Now, if I ask Dad, okay, right now on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is you think every single time you get pissed off with Liz, you're going to be able to do something else, like go for a walk or listen to Dean Martin, and there's never going to be a time where you're going to lose it with her and give her a backhand. 0 is you think the next moment you get pissed off, you're likely to give her a backhand. Where are you? Dad says, I'm about a 3. Okay, wow. What's helped you get to a 3? I'm going to ask that first. What's your next step, Dad? What's going to help you get to a 4 or a 5? Now, if Dad says, I need to go and talk to someone about what happened when I was a kid, about what helps me, you know, what triggers me losing my temper so quickly, we're going to do that as a next step. If Dad says, I think, you know, a mate of mine went to an anger management course, really helped him, we're going to suggest that. If Dad says, well, I'm not doing a bloody anger management course because I've done 7 and they didn't make the slightest difference, you might laugh. That happens back home. I don't know if it happens here. It happens. Okay. Then I'm not going to bother having an anger management course as part of the suggested next steps. But I'm going to ask Dad, what do you think is going to help you? Now, if Dad's got no ideas, I'm going to say, what do you think Mum would think was going to help you? Liz, what do you reckon's going to help him? Can I tell you what I've seen help some other families? Then I'm going to offer some ideas. That's where the services fit in. Now, in terms of the time frame, it may be like if Mum, for example, has had a history of getting herself clean and then relapsing every 6 to 12 months, my time frame is going to be more than 6 to 12 months because I want to know that she's able to get through her next period where it's, you know, she's at risk of relapsing.
And if our timelines don't allow that, then how do we bring a network in that can continue to do some of this work even after we're gone? Whether it's a professional network that includes therapists or schools, or whether it's an interpersonal, a familial network, right? So if we're up against it, you know, you can't keep the case open, you're up against your timelines, they've done a lot of good work, but you're still worried. You know, how do we leave the family with an aftercare safety plan and some clear plans about what would happen if Mom used again and the plan wasn't run, you know?
Because we're not saying in 6 months' time you can stop doing this good stuff. We're saying in 6 months' time we're feeling confident that we can now back off and the safety network is going to help you keep to this plan. And there's people in there that if in the safety plans, you'll see tomorrow, if there's a problem, what's going to happen? That's all part of the plan. Look, I know a couple of other people have got questions. What I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is actually switch now into you doing some of the writing of safety goals. If you've got a question you want me to come in, or Phil to come and talk with you that individually now, we do that, absolutely. But let's switch you into doing some of this, because that's where the learning is.
Yeah. And so I have a thought. So it's 3:37 about. This is what we'd like you to do, is we'd like you to get into two tables together. One of you act as a scribe, but we're going to bring some of the big paper around. And so first work on small paper, and just, we're tight on time, so this is what we're going to do. Take 15 minutes to talk about it as a group, start trying to shape some language. We will bang the sticks in 15 minutes, which is then when you should put it on the big paper. We're going to put it all on the walls, and then we're going to say goodnight. Tomorrow morning, we're going to come in, we're going to start the day with a gallery walk, and we're going to walk around and look at these. Susan, we can leave them up overnight, yeah? Yeah, we're going to look at them, and then we're going to refine them, and we're going to play with them a little bit. Yeah. So good with my co-trainer?
Absolutely, beautiful. So in you writing the safety goals, what you're going to do is go back to Chloe's situation from this morning. You've got in your handouts, back on that first and up here, the danger statements for Chloe. If you can flick the formula up there, and then we'll go. So in your handouts, Page 3, you've got the danger statements for Chloe. What we're asking you as a group is to write safety goals for Chloe to meet those danger statements. Yeah? They don't have to be perfect, guys. This is a learning opportunity.
Okay? Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so 2 tables together will bring you paper.